So what if I told you that the solution to those agonizing, 3-hour wait times at your local hospital isn't actually hiring more doctors?
I'd probably say you're crazy. We're pretty conditioned to think that a medical crisis needs, well, a medical solution. More beds, more surgeons.
Right, exactly, exactly. But what if the fix is actually just setting up a subsidized AI-powered kiosk in a corner store?
It's so lovely to meet you both. Tell me, how are you feeling this morning? Welcome to Prima Kiosk. I'm Dr. Maya. It's a pleasure to meet you both. How may I assist you with your healthcare needs this morning?
It sounds totally counterintuitive, but the stack of sources we're diving into today kind of shatters that whole compartmentalized thinking.
It really does. Because we are looking at this highly ambitious, just massive blueprint today. It's structured as a direct pitch to national leaders, specifically the health minister and the prime minister.
Yeah, and it proposes a total transformation of the NHS, basically arguing that to save the healthcare system, you've got to solve skyrocketing antimicrobial resistance, mass unemployment, and poverty all at the exact same time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp the scale of this solution, which centers around this thing called the Prima Kiosk and it's Dr. Maya AI, we need to look at the perfect storm of threats it's trying to fix.
Right, the clinical and the societal crises.
Yeah. So let's start with the biological threat. The numbers here are just terrifying. Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, it's often called the silent pandemic.
Which is a very accurate label, honestly.
Yeah, in 2019 alone, bacterial AMR directly caused 1.27 million deaths and was associated with like 4.7 million more. And the sources point out that AMR is increasing rapidly, hitting like 47% in some critical demographics.
And, the terminology there is important. AMR isn't a disease itself, it's an evolutionary process.
Right.
It happens when pathogens, so bacteria, viruses, when they mutate so much that they become totally immune to the drugs we use to kill them.
We're doing this to ourselves, right?
Pretty much. The massive overuse of antibiotics in human medicine and agriculture, too, is just forcing this mutation at lightning speed.
See, I always thought of antibiotic overuse as like, using a sledgehammer to swat a fly. It kills the fly, but it ruins the your immune system.
That's a common way to think about it, sure.
But based on these sources, a better analogy is that we're basically running a biological training camp for superbugs.
Oh, absolutely.
When we carpet bomb the body with broad-spectrum antibiotics for a minor sniffle, we're not just killing weak bacteria. We are actively selecting for the strongest, most heavily armored bugs.
Yeah, and the ones that survive pass that armor right on to the next generation. We are literally breeding our own worst enemies.
It's terrifying. And while our drugs are failing, the actual humans administering them are collapsing. The sources describe an NHS workforce that is just completely exhausted.
Demoralized, debilitated, they're crushed under pandemic backlogs and treating complex conditions like long COVID.
So you have failing drugs and exhausted doctors. But if we pull the lens back, the sources argue that this clinical crisis is being massively accelerated by socioeconomic issues.
Yeah, they're the primary accelerants here. When you look at vulnerability reports, pandemics and AMR are fiercely driven by social determinants of health.
SDHs, right? Like poverty.
Exactly. Poverty, overcrowded housing, political unrest, a lack of paid sick leave. Think about how an outbreak works. If people don't have income security, they can't afford to stay home when they're sick.
Right, they got to go to work.
Yeah, they go to crowded jobs, they spread infections, and the whole transmission cycle just spirals.
And then you throw political instability into the mix and it just pours gasoline on that fire.
It really does. When institutions fail to provide social safety nets, public trust just evaporates.
Which opens the door for all the misinformation.
Exactly. TikTok influencers generating these polished, fear-mongering videos about vaccines. Instead of listening to the WHO, you've got people sharing rumors on a smartphone that make them totally resistant to public health interventions.
So if you've ever waited hours in a clinic next to someone coughing, you're seeing this whole interconnected system failing in real time. But where is the actual bottleneck? Where's the pressure coming from?
Well, the data points straight to the front door of the healthcare system, the triage points.
Yeah, and the findings here are just mind-blowing.
The statistics are wild.
Right. Like decades of clinical observation show that an incredible 76% of patients demanding an emergency appointment do not actually have a serious illness.
76%?
Over 70% of people showing up in ERs or primary care have super common symptoms. Sore throats, tension headaches, minor rashes.
And clinically speaking, only about 3.8% of those cases genuinely require a hands-on physical exam.
Which means the financial drain is brutal. Missed appointments alone cost the NHS like £250 million. And that's not even counting the soaring costs of the NHS 111 triage service.
Right, because the triage filter itself is broken. Think about who is manning that front door. Receptionists, phone operators for NHS 111. They aren't trained, And legally, they aren't protected to take on the liability of telling a patient, you're fine, just stay home.
Right, because what if they're wrong?
Exactly. They lack intuitive, rapid diagnostic tools. So because they can't safely differentiate the merely unwell from the seriously unwell, they play it safe.
They just funnel everyone into the waiting room.
Yes, and that sets off a really dangerous cascade. First, you get massive amounts of wasted consultation time.
Right.
Second, you've got mildly sick people sitting right next to highly vulnerable people, causing cross-infection. And finally, it forces doctors into defensive antibiotic prescribing.
Oh, because they're rush.
Yeah, the waiting room is overflowing, patients are angry, and the doctor doesn't have rapid diagnostics to prove a sore throat is viral, so they just prescribe an antibiotic to be safe.
Which feeds right back into the 47% AMR crisis we were just talking about.
Precisely.
Need thousands of new doctors. It needs a much better filter.
A mechanism to intercept that panic before the patient even leaves their house.
Of minor cases safely. Which brings us to the innovation here, the Prima kiosk and its brain, Dr. Maya AI.
And it's important to note, this isn't pitched as some corporate cash grab. It was born from the sadness of watching impoverished parents and children die needlessly in remote villages because of delayed diagnosis.
It's a humanitarian intervention. But, okay, let's break down how Prima actually works. Because as a listener, I'm a bit skeptical.
Sure, it sounds a bit out there.
Like, you're telling me we're going to replace trained triage nurses with a touch screen? Isn't that dangerous if someone is silently having a heart attack?
Any medical professional would ask that exact question. And that's why Dr. Maya AI's architecture is so fascinating. Most diagnostic apps use rigid statistical decision trees.
Like if symptom A plus symptom B, then diagnosis C.
Right. But human illness is messy. It doesn't read the textbook. Relying purely on statistics can lead to fatal errors.
So how does Dr. Maya avoid that? The sources talk about a color-coded symptom checker, but how does a color replace a doctor's intuition?
It uses algorithmic heuristics. Dr. Fravatza developed this baseline back in the 80s. Instead of just tallying symptoms, it assigns severity weights with colors. Red for critical, yellow for moderate, green for mild.
Okay, simple enough.
But it analyzes the combinations and patterns of those inputs to escalate or de-escalate the threat. Like when a seasoned doctor looks at a patient and just thinks, they look wrong, they're processing dozens of tiny cues.
So the AI mimics that pattern recognition.
Exactly, to safely tell a minor bug from a life-threatening crisis.
Wow, and the safety net is built into this 3-level protocol, right? Let's go through that. Level 1 is offline.
Yeah, level 1 is entirely offline AI triage. The patient inputs symptoms, and the AI categorizes the urgency using that color-coded pattern.
Okay, and level 2 connects to the internet.
Right. It's a full conversational AI consultation. It takes voice inputs, can upload x-rays, and even print prescriptions.
Wait, it just prints drugs on its own?
No, only if they are authorized by a registered medical professional in the loop.
Oh, gotcha. And what if the AI hits a red critical pattern?
That triggers level 3, the human fallback. It instantly connects the user to a human doctor via telemedicine. So the kiosk is a filter, not a total replacement.
And the downstream impact on AMR is huge.
Oh my gosh, look at this. That looks really irritated. But look, it's gone. Prima Kiosk has the best solutions.
And Dr. Maya actively educates the patient.
Yep.
Right. It says, hey, your symptoms are viral. 80% of colds don't respond to antibiotics. And it recommends paracetamol instead.
By doing that before they reach the clinic, you keep contagious people out of hospitals, you slash the costs of NHS 111 triage, you cut hospital admissions.
And you stop needless deaths. Because the person who is actually severely ill gets seen immediately instead of waiting behind 50 people with the sniffles.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because having a great medical tool is useless if people can't access it. How does a touchscreen help the 760 million people in India without smartphones?
Or the 287 million illiterate adults globally.
Right.
Well, the Prima kiosk was engineered specifically for vulnerable populations. Illiterate women, street vendors, manual laborers.
The interface is entirely visual and icon-based, and it uses voice guidance in regional languages.
You can literally just speak your symptoms out loud to the machine. It bridges that massive digital divide.
But the true genius is how it tackles poverty and unemployment. It proposes this microeconomy built around what they call Maya advocates.
This is where it becomes an economic intervention.
Unemployed people can buy a subsidized Prima kiosk for as little as 10,000 rupees. They set it up in a corner store and run it as their own micro-business.
And look at how this heals the system from the ground up. You are creating viable jobs for families and councils that are just devastated by job loss right now.
You secure their income, which means better housing and nutrition, which boosts their immune resilience.
Yep. And it turns vulnerable community members into this decentralized public health workforce.
It's incredible. You're treating the economy and the patient at the exact same time. Which brings us to the ultimate pitch directed at the Prime Minister, zooming all the way out.
Right, the global disease surveillance aspect.
Every time someone interacts with a kiosk, it generates anonymized symptom data.
And the system is constantly hunting for patterns. If a cluster of kiosks detects a surge of severe respiratory issues, it triggers a BLUE alert,
The suspected outbreak mapped in real time.
which changes everything. Traditional public health, like the WHO's 10-step approach, relies on waiting for hospitalizations to detect an outbreak.
Like that waterborne Campylobacter outbreak in Aski, Norway.
Exactly. Authorities didn't know until severely dehydrated people flooded the ER. By then, thousands had drank the contaminated water for days. You're always 10 days behind the pathogen.
But with the Prima network, officials would see a spike in stomach issues logged at local kiosks on a Tuesday morning.
Down to the street level, they could issue a boil water advisory days earlier and isolate patients instantly.
So the pitch to the PM and the health minister is basically, adopt this. Integrate Dr. Maya AI. Solve your NHS crises. First, cut the 111 costs, end the waiting lists, stop the wasted consultations.
And then you make the NHS the global hub. You offer this AI triage service to other nations, monitoring epidemics and pandemics globally.
Wow. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's just wild to look at the journey here. From the threats of AMR, NHS exhaustion, and poverty, to this blueprint that uses AI, run by local micro-entrepreneurs, acting as a global early warning shield.
It refuses to accept that clinical necessity and social equity are separate issues.
Totally. And for you listening, whether you're following health tech or just sick of waiting at your local clinic, this deep dive proves that solving the healthcare crisis means treating the economy, the community, and the patient all at once.
It really does. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If AI systems like Dr. Maya become the standard front door to healthcare analyzing our coughs and mapping symptoms before we ever step into a clinic, will the concept of a waiting room just disappear?
That's a wild thought.
And are we ready for a future where our primary care provider isn't a doctor in a hospital, but an unemployed neighbor who found a new purpose running an AI kiosk on our street corner?
You know, we started out talking about precision medicine like it's just about finding the perfect pill, but maybe real precision is accurately mapping the whole messy socioeconomic world that caused the illness in the first place. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive.
Will our actions reduce suffering or cause it to multiply? Civilizations that remember this lesson endure, not those who ignore it. Choose wisely to prevent and protect your loved ones and your life. Don't be the one who watches them without doing anything. It's your family and community I am trying to prevent, protect, and heal. Not kindling your emotions, promising a miracle cure, or using AI to invent drugs, or coding your genes to cure disease. As Charles Darwin said, it's not hoarded wealth, hiding in a bunker, or power, but those who adapt quickly who survive.